Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Animation Appreciation Podcast. Today I will be covering Disney's Hercules. Greek mythology is messy, and as such, there are adult themes in this episode. I will do my best to keep it simple and family friendly, but I can only do so much as it is, in fact, Greek mythology. If you have any complaints, address them to Zeus, as he is usually the one who's causing all of the problems. Each of the muses have a specialty, and it is actually shown here, but there are 9, not 5. We have one for astronomy, hymns, tragic theater, comic theater. We have history, epic poetry, song and elegiac poetry, dance, and lyrical poetry. Of those, Disney chose Calliope, who is in charge of epic poetry, Melpomene, who is in charge of tragic theater. I cannot pronounce that one. We have Therichor, I cannot say that name properly, who is in charge of dance. We have Thalia in charge of comedic theater, and Cleo, the muse of history. If you happen to hear my dog walking around, I cannot help that. I love him very much, but he does not sit still when I'm recording, and this is my brand new, very nice mic. Hope you're enjoying the difference. So, history, both comedic and tragic plays, and epic poetry have all been chosen, as well as history and dance to tell the story. That is actually lovely. Mel and Thalia are easy to tell who is who, as Mel takes Thalia's mask in the opening sequence and it turns from comedy to tragedy. Cleo is the one who tells us the most of the history, as that is her forte. That would be my dog walking around. Theirs is there because of all of the dancing, and Calliope is there to be our info dump. All of the Muses dances are actually based on actual dancers. They had models come in and perform all of these dances and songs, actually, and they recorded them and used those as reference footage, which is used similar to rotoscoping, but instead of like placing the frame on the rotoscoped frame and tracing it, they just watched them and made their motions similar. Also, I'd like to point out that the models used were the same body types as the muses they were embodying. Each of the gods has a different and unique design, which in itself is impressive. Each one represents its element beautifully. Though amplified for effect, the domain of each god is well represented. But Zeus didn't make Pegasus, actually. It was actually the severed head of Medusa, whose blood hit the earth and became Pegasus. Or there is one that says it was Poseidon's doing who did it. And yes, there are that many gods and more in the Greek pantheon. The Greek gods are not this family friendly in mythology. I'm going to try to cover that, but again, that's why there was a warning with this. In case you're wondering, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades all chose what to have dominion over. Zeus claimed the sky, Poseidon took dominion over the seas, and they kind of stuck Hades with the dead and the riches of the earth, which sounds like a good thing until you realize he has to personally count, register, and maintain all of the souls and sort each and every one of them. One got the sky of freedom, one got the ocean of exploration, and one got bureaucracy. That seems fair. But no, Hades was actually not very upset about this. He genuinely didn't mind. He was a neutral or downright generous god. He just was there to sort souls and help the dead. And in a few cases, when someone came in with a good story, he actually helped them along their way and gave them their loved one. He really wasn't a bad guy and he was not mad about his lot. He just did his job and went on. So yeah, in the actual mythology, he is not considered evil. He's just a man doing his job. But, Disney needs to villain. Pain is the only one to actually get hurt of pain and panic, and panic clearly has a severe case of anxiety. That being said, there is no mythological basis for those two. They're just delightful. When it comes to the three fates, we see one stretching out the thread. Her job is actually to measure the thread. Clearly, there is one for cutting the thread, which is, what she does on scene. What we don't see is the third sister spinning the thread of life and controlling where it goes. Greek gods usually start out mortal, sometimes, um, but turn they can go from mortal to god, and there actually is a precedence where a god was being punished and had to live a mortal life. but they went back to being gods after. So there is very easily, precedence for gods being mortal and mortals becoming gods. Also, one moment where we enjoy the fact that these small sparks, or just the dirt that pop up when the disc lands, got Herc's feet. Also, really quick, just something I'm not going to repeat or I will repeat later. Later on, when I discuss some more historically accurate events, I will call Hercules Heracles, as that is the Greek pronunciation of his name. When the Romans came in, they changed it to Hercules. This is taking place in Greek, and many other people are being called by their Greek names. So, in all honesty, we should be calling him Heracles. The entire style is a cartoony version of what Greek style paintings look like. And yes, I was absolutely obsessed with Go the Distance as a child, and I kind of still am. I love the visuals of this. Everything here has weight to it, and it has a beautiful way of telling the story. Also, he is told that he is one of the children of the gods and instantly wants to go to Zeus. To be fair, in mythology, if you were a demigod, odds are Zeus did it. Yes, there are a lot of other gods. Yes, they made all of them have kids at some point. Yes, Disney tried to make Zeus family friendly. And honestly, he was a good father and a good and loyal man here. But that's not what Zeus was. In fact, Hercules was not Hera's child at all. Hercules was a child between Zeus and a mortal. And Hera did not like that at all. In fact, she is most of the things that Hades, quote unquote, does to Hercules, she did to Hercules. She was not a fan of him. In fact, most of the theme for mythology is everything was fine. And then Zeus slept with insert name here. It does not have to be a girl. He slept with at least one man. And then all hell broke loose. The Temple of Zeus is a decent representation of what the Zeus's temple would have looked like. The statue would have been golden and ivory with a golden staff instead of made of stone, and the mosaic on the floor would have told the story that the temple was there to represent. Hercules' reaction is valid in this movie's context and also in mythology context to finding out Zeus is your father. Here, Zeus explains how a mortal can become a god, which is by heroic deeds on earth. This is not true. At any point in time, he could have said, you know what? Yeah, you're a god now. And he'd have been a god. But that's not a good storytelling, apparently. Nymphs and satyrs are all lesser nature spirits, countless in number, but they always help out the gods. And actually, the interaction between the nymphs and Phil here show how satyrs and nymphs usually interact, including the poof, I'm a flower, poof, I'm a tree. They did that a lot. You did not dare kill the wrong tree or plant because it could very well be a nature spirit, and the god in charge of them will not be happy with you. In Greek, the phrase I am retired is in fact two words. Disney had that joke correct. I cannot pronounce them and will not be trying to. I have already butchered enough names in this episode. Phil's house has the following details. Part of the mast of the ship of the Argo, and I'm just going to say this now, all of the things that are referenced in this it come after Hercules, not before, not during, but after Hercules. So this is historically out of order, but we're just going to go with it. There is also the Golden Fleece, several of pieces of damaged hero gear meant to show all of his fallen trainees. Which, by the way, Phil did not, in fact, train any heroes. He was a friend, a human friend to Hercules. And it was actually an centaur named Chiron that trained him. If you've read the Percy Jackson series, you got the right idea. Oh, it was actually Odysseus who went on the Odyssey, and he's the one who fought the Great Boar. There are some varying acts of Hercules that have been mismanaged and handed around. He did not fight the boar. Perseus is actually the one who killed Medusa by decapitation with his mirror-like shield, and the helm he is wearing is actually, as far as we can tell, the helm of invisibility, which is actually supposed to be more of a Roman helmet worn by Hades, actually. And it was Theseus who fought the Minotaur, did not die by the Minotaur, rather easily choked him out and killed him. Achilles was bathed in the river Styx by his mother, who held him by one heel. The presence of the river Styx on his skin turned his skin invulnerable anywhere it touched and nowhere it didn't, leaving his heel exposed. This proved to be his only mortal point, so he could die only if he was hit there because that was the only way to pierce his skin. And yes, that's why we call it the Achilles tendon. By the way, hurt that tendon, you will not use that foot again. At the start of Phil's song, we can actually see Perseus in the background with Medusa's head in statue form, and later close as it falls on his head. Okay, by the way, is still one word in Greek, so he was actually not going to say okay, obviously. In case one any doesn't know, the olive on his horns thing is a joke referencing the idea that a newbie is often called a greenhorn. Many Greek myths were commonly displayed on pottery, also called crockery. So when he says, don't believe what you read on the crockery, he's basically saying, don't believe what you read on a cereal box. Nessus is a centaur Hercules did actually kill in battle, but the poisoned blood of the centaur landed on Hercules, poisoned him, and that's actually how he died, and he was granted godhood afterwards. And yes, Herc checked the centaur's gender before he called him sir. In the actual myth, Heracles saves Thebes and is given, yes, I did say given, Meg to be his wife. Legend says they were happy until Hera drove him crazy and he accidentally killed his entire family and had to get remarried. But, this is a better way for them to have met, and the ending is much happier. And yes, I do mean that women were previously handed out as prizes and property. Lovely. In this movie, Herc is now 18, and Meg, I believe, is older by her calling him Junior and the fact she had a relationship before. So unless that happened at 16 or 17, I'm going to put her about 20, but some sources say up to 28. I'm just not a fan of that, though Disney does have an issue with age gaps. Tiffany and Jason, along with many other old names, have an historical issue. They are all still common, so if you call a girl Tiffany and a boy Jason in historical pieces, some will think you're just putting modern names to them, when in fact, that's the names that's that old. The issue arose specifically using the name Tiffany in historical pieces, and that is why it is technically called the Tiffany problem. In Thebes, by the way, Thebes is based on Vegas, as Disney was famous for doing during this time, basing everything on Vegas. Graffiti says, "The end is coming, and Athenians go home." We see a statue of Atlas holding up the sky, represented by a globe with stars all over it. He was tasked with this, and I believe he tricked Hercules into taking it, and Hercules outwitted him and made him take it back. When the minions say, "Someone call IXII," that is Roman numerals for 911. Again, this is before Rome, though. When the shot is showing Meg watching Hercules from the cliff, we see all the rocks on the right side pointing right at her and at Hercules. This is one technique for art to draw humans' eyes into one location. This movie is also how an entire generation learned what the Hydra is. The Hydra originally only had 9 heads, did not regrow anymore, but if you cut one off and didn't take care of it the right way, it would just regrow. But it maintained 9 heads at all times. And yes, the Hydra in this movie is CGI. In mythology, Herc killed the Hydra using Athena's sword and a torch to burn the neck stub so it couldn't respawn. He actually had a brother who had a child by this point, and it was the nephew who brought him Athena's sword. Most of the adventures and the monsters he defeated are either the labors of Heracles, or also known as the labors of Hercules, but I like Heracles, or they are the feats of Odysseus, Perseus, or anyone else. It's just kind of all of the references. This movie used the squash and stretch to show rapid motion, which is a technique where you take characters and draw them deformed in a long, stretched out way or condensed and squished form to show sudden motion or sudden stop. Just so you know, the difference in a vase and a vase is price. So all of these were vases until Hercules' face was put on it. That is because anything priced at $100 US, this is what I found, is considered, if it's priced at less than $100, it is a vase. If it is priced above that, it is a vase. So these were vases priced at under 100, and now they are vases because now they got more expensive. He actually did not beat the boar, but he did beat the Nemean lion and kept his fur too. The Nemean lion was actually one of the first things Hercules did, and he wore it throughout his entire story. I love the reference to the Pandora's box and the Trojan horse story. If you don't know the stories, you'll have to Google them for the full story, but the short of it is all of man's sins were in a box and it was given over to a woman. She was told never open this box, and after so much time wondering what was in the box, she finally lost it and opened it, and out of it through all the sins of man. She quickly shut the box, leaving one behind, but it was not a sin, it was hope. Pandora's box contains hope, the last thing humanity has. As for the Trojan War, I have heard that the Trojan horse did not actually work, but the story is that they built a giant wooden horse, put an army inside of it, knocked on the door, and said, "Hey, as a peace offering, we brought you a giant horse." And they let the horse in, and they escaped. The entire army escaped at night and destroyed the entire place. At Hercules' villa, we see he has Scar's skin, meant to represent the Nemean lion. For further evidence, you can actually see the scar on the correct side of this, well, lion. And if you listen close, you can actually hear Phil actually mentions some of the labors of Heracles when it comes time for him to tell Hercules what all he has to do that day. Note the reflections on the floor. Someone sat down to paint those. Oedipus. Yep, that is a whole story in itself. If you want to Google it, there's an entire mental condition named after the Oedipus ordeal, the Oedipus complex. In short, he was split from his mother all his life, found her, didn't know it, slept with her, found out, gouged out his own eyes. So if you're attracted to your mother, you're said to have an Oedipus complex. And yes, the moment she realizes she's in love is when Cupid's arrow pokes her in the back. That was supposed to be about Meg. I forgot to put her name in that note. When Herc lost his strength, he lost the saturation of his color. Also, the Titans were not like they are depicted here. They are what was in control before the gods, and there were major and minor of them. None of them were just elementals like they are depicted here. In fact, one of them is Kronos, which, by the way, Hades would never have helped because Kronos ate him, and he had to escape from that. Yes, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus were Kronos' children. Yes, he ate them. It's fine. He ate them whole. It's fine. They did escape. His use of the torch to burn the Cyclops happened, but it was actually Odysseus who did it, and at the time he was going by the name Nobody. When the Cyclops called for help from his fellow Cyclopses, when asked, "Who's hurting you?" he screamed, "Nobody." And the Cyclopses went, "Then why are you bothering us?" and left. Lovely. Every human in this movie has an actual unique design, which is in itself difficult, but well done. Zeus did not, in fact, defeat the Titans alone by any means. He had help from all of his siblings. Also, chaos is an entity in Greek mythology, and when the intro says Zeus stopped chaos in its tracks, that is false. Zeus can't stop them. That deity is one of the strongest of the gods. Also, Narcissus is not a god. He's just a man who found his own reflection in a pool of water and then proceeded to stare at it until he died. And he was turned into a flower, or Persephone. Sorry about all that background noise. We had a dog walking around. She needs to trim her nails a little bit. I lost my spot. Okay, the Fates do not actually share one eye. That is the gray ones, and they also only have one tooth among all of them, and they share that as well. Hera has tried to overthrow Zeus, and yes, she absolutely did, as I said before, hate Heracles, because he was the child of Zeus's adultery. Hades is actually very chill, as I mentioned. It is actually in this version that he has many of her traits. So, yeah, she's the one who didn't like Zeus. In fact, it was actually her who sent the two snakes, and instead of tying them in knots and throwing them away so they survived, Heracles actually snapped their necks and killed them on the spot. And as I mentioned previously, the gods have a reputation for making mortals into gods for no reason. They did not need him to prove anything. He could have become a god at any time. Also, Pegasus was not actually Hercules' horse. He had nothing to do with Hercules. So, yeah, Hercules just drove around like everyone else. So, that is all I have for Disney's Hercules. Thank you, and thank you for listening to my first ever episode with this brand new microphone and setup. Always remember, if it's animated, someone absolutely did it on purpose. Thank you and have a great day.